Air travel is an extremely popular and convenient way to see the globe, with thousands of people catching planes every single day to the different corners, eager to get away from their lives for just a bit, or to see old friends, or maybe even to make the business deal of a lifetime. The trouble is, though, that catching a flight can sometimes lead to your name being in the newspaper, and not in a fun way, leaving you wondering if all those people catching a boat may have got the right idea. Here is a list of some of the strangest cases of entire airplanes going missing without a trace. Stay tuned to number 1 and let us know your theories on these cases in the comments below. Number 10. Flight 2723. On April 26, 1966, a passenger plane carrying 28 passengers and 5 crew members en route from Baku-Bina International Airport in Azerbaijan to the Makhachkala Airport in Russia, a flight that would total just about 330 miles. They radioed into their control tower 12 minutes after takeoff, reporting issues with their engines. The crew hypothesized that it might be a problem with the spark plugs in the engines, and they made the decision to return to Baku-Bina Airport rather than risk the remainder of the journey. But the flight would never make it back. While on the return trip to the airport, the crew radioed one final time to their control tower, reporting that the engines had begun to vibrate and cool down, and that they had dropped in altitude to just 200 meters above sea level. In the broadcast, the pilot had decided that they would need to ditch the plane. Pilot talk that basically meant they would need to have a crash landing. The plane and its occupants were never to be seen or heard from again. Despite searches over both land and sea for the next several days, to this day, the whereabouts of that plane and its now ghostly passengers and crew have yet to be discovered. Number 9. The Boeing 727 that vanished. A Boeing is already a pretty big plane, with a length of 153 feet and a wingspan of 108 feet. It's hard to believe that something of its size can disappear without a trace. Yet back in 2003, a Boeing 727 with an already complicated past managed to do just that. This particular 727 had been used briefly to transport fuel to diamond mines in Angola before being grounded for lack of correct documentation. There, the aircraft had been left to deteriorate for upwards of a year until an American entrepreneur, Mari Joseph, found a new buyer for the plane's engines. Ben Padilla was the man chosen for the job of restoring the aircraft and was tasked with getting the 727 back into skyworthy shape. Within a month, the plane was restored to its former glory, and although Padilla had a private pilot's license, he was not capable of flying something the size of the 727. So he hired a pilot and co-pilot to get the plane over to Johannesburg in South Africa. Late in the afternoon, on the 25th of May 2003, Padilla and his hired crew boarded the aircraft in order to test run the 3 engines, when suddenly, and without contacting the control tower for clearance, the huge Boeing 727 began to move towards the runway, moving erratically over the tarmac. It then joined the runway and, again, without any communication to the control tower and with all external lights turned off, it rolled down the runway and took off, banking to the southeast over the Atlantic Ocean, and would never be seen again. Several speculations have arisen over the possible causes of the disappearance. The chief among these was that the current owner, Mari Joseph, had staged the whole thing for an insurance payout, but no claim was ever filed. Being just 2 years after the September 11th attacks, and the fact that the plane also required 3 crew members to pilot, terrorism was also suspected, but no terrorist groups came forward admitting to the theft. The true nature of what happened to the 727 may never be discovered, but it's still a good one to think about. Number 8. Varig Flight 967. Flight 967 was a Boeing 707 cargo plane that departed from Narita International Airport in Japan on January 30, 1979. It was en route to Rio de Janeiro International Airport with a connecting flight in Los Angeles when it disappeared off the radar. Approximately 30 minutes after departing Narita Airport and 120 miles into the journey, the control towers lost contact with the plane. It would never be seen or heard from again. On board the flight were 6 crew members, including a highly experienced pilot, Captain Gilberto Arroyo da Silva, a pilot who had upward of 23,000 hours logged and had flown Flight 820 in 1973. That flight crash-landed just outside of Paris, resulting in 123 deaths and only 11 survivors, including the captain, of course. Also on board Flight 967 were no fewer than 53 paintings by the famed Japanese-Brazilian artist Manabu Meibe, valued at an estimated $1.3 million. The paintings had been in an art exhibition in Tokyo and were being transported back home when the flight disappeared. Although the aircraft and the paintings were never recovered, investigators looking into the incident concluded that the cause of the accident was cabin depressurization, which killed the crew, causing the plane to go down somewhere over the ocean. The crew, the artwork, forever lost to the sea. Number 7. Frederick Valentich. Frederick Valentich was a 20-year-old who aspired to be a pilot in the Royal Australian Air Force, but had already failed his testing to get into the academy. In an attempt to rack up some flying time, he decided to fly a Cessna 182L from Victoria Moorabbin Airport over the Bass Strait to King Island. Roughly 50 minutes into his flight, he radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control to report another aircraft flying past above him, too fast for him to identify, and eventually stating that it was not an aircraft at all that had been flying above him. But then the broadcast was cut off, and that was the last that anybody ever heard from him. There are many speculations regarding what could have happened to him, some making the accusation that based on his flying record, he was an accident waiting to happen, or that he had mistaken his own headlights reflecting off the water as the lights of another aircraft. Others say it was suicide, but most people speculate that he had a run-in with little green men. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Number 6. The Disappearance of Lightheart. Lightheart was a hot air balloon built by Colonel Thomas Lee Gatch with the intention of flying it across the Atlantic, starting in Pennsylvania and finishing somewhere in Western Europe. Lightheart lifted off on February 18, 1974 and set off at an altitude of 33,500 feet. For 16 hours, he managed to keep in radio contact with passing airplanes, actually diverting 2 of them to avoid his airspace. But his last transmission was made on February 19th, 900 miles northeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico. It was clear that he had drifted far south of his intended course, and at that point, no other contact was ever made with Gatch. On the 21st of February, a freight ship reported seeing the balloon early in the morning. It was only 1,000 feet in the air and 1,000 miles from the Canary Islands, floating towards Africa. Gatch had designed his gondola to float in the event of a water landing, but he and his balloon were never to be seen again. Some speculated that he may have landed in the Spanish Sahara and search parties were sent out, but no sign of Thomas Gatch nor his balloon were ever found. Number 5. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart is one of aviation's greatest mysteries, with theories appearing even today on her possible whereabouts, with countless theories on her disappearance and what might have become of her. In the event that you're not familiar, Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She was an author and a pioneer in her field. Then one day, while attempting to fly around the globe, she disappeared. While flying over the Central Pacific Ocean from New Guinea on one of the last legs of her trip, she and her navigator Fred Noonan disappeared without a trace, not far from the Howland Island just north of the equator. Theories on what happened to her vary from a simple airplane malfunction and crash landing into the ocean to landing on Nikamuru Island just 350 miles off of Howland Island, to landing in the Marshall Islands, controlled by the Japanese. Some conspiracy theorists believe that she and Noonan were captured by the Japanese, who may have believed that they were spies for America. One thing is for certain though, somewhere out there lies Amelia's remains, and perhaps one day we will finally know the truth to a question that is still going on 80 years later. Number 4. Flight 19. Everybody is familiar with the Bermuda Triangle, and this incident is the very genesis of the legend. On December 5, 1945, 5 Navy Avenger planes took off from Fort Lauderdale on a training mission, led by flight instructor Charles Taylor. 1.5 hours into the mission, the pilots began reporting that they were feeling disoriented and that their compasses were not working correctly. The weather began to get worse, and the squad could no longer identify any landmarks below them. Despite the best efforts of the air traffic controllers, the team just could not find any nearby land and decided to ditch their planes into the ocean. All 14 people on board the 5 planes were killed in the landing. And in true Bermuda Triangle form, one of the planes that got sent out for rescue attempts was also never seen again. This incident just marks the first of many that would form part of the legend that is now the Bermuda Triangle. Number 3. The Flying Tiger. In March of 1962, a military flight carrying soldiers in the early stages of the Vietnam War disappeared over the Mariana Trench. Now known to be around 36,000 feet deep, this is currently the deepest known point in the ocean. An hour after the flight's last communication with air traffic controllers, some members of an oil tanker in the area reported spotting a luminous explosion in the sky, believed to be from the plane in question. No distress calls have been received by the control tower, which made pinpointing the location of the flight's last known coordinates far more challenging. The U.S. military launched a massive search party, comprising of 1,300 people, 8 service vessels, and 48 aircraft to try to track down the fallen plane. Between them, they searched a whopping 144,000 square miles without finding a single piece of debris or any sign of a crash landing. Some people believe that the plane was accidentally shot down by US's own military, who then covered up what happened, while others believe it was just a simple mechanical malfunction. You decide which you believe, let us know in the comments. Number 2. Malaysia Air Flight MH370. On March 8, 2014, Malaysian Air Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport headed for China. But within an hour of takeoff, the flight began to change course from its prescribed route towards China, leaving the air traffic controllers' radar screens. Military radar continued to pick it up though, and continued to track it as it flew west towards the Malay Peninsula, well off of its designated course. At 2:22 a.m., the plane finally fell off of military radar, never to be heard from again. All 227 passengers and 12 crew members would disappear along with it. To date, it is the most expensive disappearance in aviation history, with the search expanding over several different airspaces and over 46,000 square miles of seafloor. Although some debris was found off the coast of Africa, the flight and what caused it to deviate so far off its course has never been discovered. Even now, in 2018, the search has continued, with people determined to finally discover what may have happened to Flight MH370. Let us know what you think may have caused it to deviate from its course in the comments below. Number 1. The Curse of Flight 191. Number 1 is not referring to a singular flight in particular, but rather it's a bonus entry, because of how eerie it really is. Flight 191 has had at least 5 different incidents over the last 40 years, and the flight number has even been retired by certain airlines. The most prominent of these incidents is the American Airlines Flight 191, which crashed just 45 seconds after takeoff, killing all 273 passengers and crew. The most recent incident of trouble with Flight 191 was in 2012, when the captain had an allergic reaction and was locked out of the flight deck by the first officer, just to be restrained by the passengers. So, while they weren't out-and-out disappearances, definitely some strange things are in the air. Get it? Anyway, let us know what you think about these strange disappearances in the comments below. Which one did you find most intriguing? Don't forget to like this video, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you.